Well, hello, this is Puddle. Welcome back to my channel where I share my original projects, tips, and experiences. If you're new and you want to follow along for more, like, sub, bell. If you watched my last video where I discussed the dysfunction behind storytimes, you might know where this is going. Today I'm going to go back to some of my old storytime videos and talk about where stuff sits now, and, well, the aftermath. Storytime addendums, I suppose. I stalked a man who disappeared. So this one went the best possible route. I even cover it in the video. I sent a draft of the rabbit hole video to Steve himself to get his permission before sharing it. He was cool with it, he liked it, he wanted to add to it. That was an example of something that went right entirely because I got lucky and I found him and I could ask for permission. But for my other storytime videos, I don't give pictures, names, receipts of stuff I find. It's just my first-hand account of what happened from my perspective. For instance, reading my middle school diary. This one surprisingly didn't come back to haunt me, yet a prospect that makes some folks' skin crawl is I'm mutuals with some of my old classmates from middle school. Even my old crush knows at least the gist of what I've shared, if not every line of my diary. The bad date, Sunflower. This one did not go the best. Sunflower found my video nearly a year after I made it. After my phone bricked, I stopped using Snapchat and we never spoke again. For me, it was a date that didn't click right, no big deal, a learning experience of conversations to have sooner. Her commenting that in retrospect, she thought it was a just friends outing, which is wild because we talked up front about being polyamorous. I paid for lunch. She said it was a date on the date, and we had conversations about her boyfriend's comfort with her dating other people. It was called a date multiple times, but she remembered it differently, and was mostly upset that I was uncomfortable with the just-turned 18 age gap, since it implied something negative about her husband, which I understand her being upset by this. But I did end up deleting her comment because it was tied to her real name and her identity, and also it contained multiple paragraphs invalidating my discomfort at being continuously misgendered. So, you know, engagement baiting would mean going into a big tirade about who's right or wrong, or taking her entire message and comment to bits, when really we're just different people with different focuses and values and needs in our lives. But for the other dating stories, if you delve into right or wrong, you either give someone an unfair amount of benefit of the doubt, or you potentially vilify them while assuming that you have the full perspective. But god, is it hard when I would meet chasers on these dating apps. Because chasers just see a projection and want you to play some fantasy version of a person that they made up in their head, and when you're not comfortable with it, things can get scary. There are literally so many more weird dating stories I could tell since I made that video. But some of those guys were actually scary. Who knows, maybe if I'm a sneaky jerk and I put them on Patreon. It'd be nice to afford rent, actually. Speaking of, real quick, I want to give a quick shout out to all the stars in my Patreon constellation, and viewers like you. Thank you. Okay, so the I was doxxed video. This was a weird one. I made the video and it got shared a lot amongst former members of this unnamed community. A lot of people reached out to me. It was kind of crazy. Some old usernames popped up for the first time in a decade, and I'll admit it was kind of scary. But a lot of them were very kind and apologized for how stuff went down. But, there was one weird thing. Remember in the last video when I said there was a pattern in my past where somebody would say something really uncomfortable and then they'd laugh it off with a fake apology, and I would always be like, oh, it's okay, I'm hard to offend. And there was a moment after my video came out where I was added into a group DM. It was me, one other person who was harassed, and someone who wanted to apologize. And in very few messages, it went from, you both deserve better than to be treated so awfully, to,
given a chance, I would sniff both your feet.
and I had some weird Jimmy Neutron brain blast like, oh, no, I am not doing this again, and said, I wish you well, I'm out of here, and I left the chat. We call that growth. Or I guess we don't, because here I am, leaning into my microphone, telling YouTube about dysfunction I experienced. And then the next one in my script is about my overcoming agoraphobia video. Jokes aside, I think I will be putting the overcoming agoraphobia addendum on my Patreon. If you like this and you haven't subscribed yet, maybe at least tell me your thoughts on some of this stuff. If not, maybe check out my other story vids or project guides, or my secret channel. I'm gonna go back to streaming soon, so heads up for that. Thank you for listening, take care.